is linked to the control of sodium balance, the control of the volume ECF. And then it was also mentioned, and towards the end, I will talk briefly that the kidneys are very essential in the pH balance, the control of the blood acidity. And we will also talk also on the potassium balance and the control of sodium concentration. So at this stage, let me say that the control of sodium concentration by the kidney, the one in blue, is quite different from the control of sodium balance, which is linked to the one in green, which is the volume of the ECF. And I think for all of us, we have the general knowledge that essential organic solids like glucose and amino acids are freely filtered in the kidney together with the plasma and 100% reabsorbed back into the circulation. So these are the overview of some of the things we'll be talking about: osmoregulation, control of volume, which is the control of sodium balance, control of potassium balance. And let me say right now, before I ask the next group of students to come in to introduce, that when you talk about osmoregulation, it is also related to what is known as the control of water balance. Okay, let me repeat. Osmoregulation by the kidney is linked to what we understand by the control of water balance. Because as you change the water balance, you will change the osmolarity. So, so now I'd like to introduce another three of your classmates, Dania, Sarah, and Ruth, who will introduce a little bit about water balance before I describe a bit more. Let's welcome them.
It's finally the break time. I'm already tired from the previous class.
Oh my God, finally. Let's order some food.
Before that, I have some quizzes for you.
That's cool, Sarah. Tell us about the quiz.
Sure, come on, Sarah, tell us about it.
So, what is the organ that is essential in water balance? The clue is a red bean-shaped organ.
An organ with a red bean shape. I think maybe the spleen.
No, I guess Gaster.
No, the answer is it's kidneys. Kidneys are essential in water balance.
Oh, wait, why the answer is kidneys? What do you mean?
Guys, before you explain us about the kidneys and water balance, can you tell us first about the water balance, Sarah?
Okay, so the definition of water balance is the ratio between the water assimilated into the body and that lost from the body. Also, is the condition of the body when this ratio approximates equilibrium.
Ah, I see. But so what is the relation between water balance and the kidneys?
I think we can make it simple. Can you just give an example about the relation, Sarah?
For example, when you are dehydrated or in negative water balance, the kidneys will reabsorb more water.
I got it. So this means that when you are overhydrated or in a positive water balance, the kidneys will excrete a larger volume of urine.
So I assume that water balance controlled by the kidneys are related to the kidneys' role in osmoregulation. Is that true?
Yes. So, do you know what will happen if there is dysfunction of the kidneys?
I guess based on your explanation, when your kidneys fails, waste and extra food can build up in your blood and that will make you feel sick, I think.
And if the kidneys stop working, our body will lose its role to keep the homeostasis.
Yes, so we have to keep our kidneys healthy.
And we have to keep track of our food and drink enough in order to save our kidneys.
Let's go to the class.
Okay, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Ruth, Sarah, and Putri for that introduction to my second point. And so the second point is, let me just move down. So my second point is the control of water balance. And as I said, the control of water balance is linked to what is known as osmoregulation. So before that, let's look at the first step of urine formation. And this is called the glomerular filtration rate because this occurs at the glomerular capillary. Now, the values that is mentioned in all textbook is about in the standard 70 kilogram male adult, the standard physiological reference point is about 125 ml per minute. Now, this value may not mean very much, but if you convert that to the total volume that is filtered by the glomerulus in a single day, so 125 times 60 times 24, it works out to a huge volume, 180 liters per day, are filtered by both your kidneys or the roughly 2 million nephrons in the kidney. So this 180 liters of plasma, which is filtered by both the kidneys, tells you something very essential about kidney function. So if you think about the 70 kilogram male adult that we just mentioned, the total extracellular fluid, the one that we mentioned, the internal environment of all the cell, is roughly 14 liters. So this means that in a single day, more than 10 times of your extracellular fluid is processed by the kidney because, as we said, the kidney's function is in the homeostasis of the extracellular fluid, the constancy of the internal environment of all the cells. So now, if you have ever thought about your daily urine production, this is about maybe 1 to 2 liters per day. And this tells you again that the second function of the kidney is to be able to recover and reabsorb most of this 180 liters per day. So if you produce about 2 liters of urine per day, this means that the kidney also has an immense capacity to reabsorb water, which will be 178 liters per day. So this, so the percentage of your urine output in the kidney is actually very small, okay, 2 liters per day. So depending on your water balance, as the students described, if you are in positive water balance, the amount of urine produced will obviously be more. If you are dehydrated and the kidney needs to reabsorb even more water, then your urine output will be less. So the volume of urine that you produce is a reflection of the compensation of the kidney for either negative water balance or positive water balance. Let me give you some details now. So the ability of the kidney to reabsorb water is due to a very unique, very high region of osmolarity, which you will learn when you move into renal physiology. And this is called the osmotic stratified renal tissue. This is the renal cortex, and this is the renal medulla. So as you move from the renal cortex to the inner medulla, you find that there is a region of increasing osmolarity. And this obviously presents a prepared osmotic gradient so that in the cases of negative water balance, your kidney is able to reabsorb more water. So this is very unique. Most other tissues, in fact, maybe all other tissues in the body, the osmolarity is just the same as in ECF, which is 300. But there is a unique mechanism in the kidney that is able to generate this very high region of osmolarity so that you have an osmotic gradient that is all ready to reabsorb water. So let's move on. So now if you see the word here, vasopressin, this is the hormone, as you might have seen in the first presentation by the student, that is involved in water balance. The other name for vasopressin is just anti-diuretic hormone. So the function of the anti-diuretic hormone is obviously to prevent loss of excess water in your urine volume. Okay, so if you are in negative water balance, there will be increased secretion of vasopressin or ADH. And so vasopressin will then make one part of the kidney, the collecting duct, permeable to water. But in addition to vasopressin action, you also need to have that osmotic gradient, which is what we said earlier, the osmotic stratification of the hyperosmolarity in the renal medulla. So this example here is obviously the opposite situation where you have positive water balance. Excess water has been consumed, and so and as I said, osmoregulation is linked to water balance. So a positive water balance shown here would be a reduction in the body fluid osmolarity. And so the osmoreceptors will sense the drop in the osmolarity as a result of the positive water balance. And this obviously reverses the effect in reducing the secretion of ADH or vasopressin. And so the tubular permeability at the collecting duct is no longer permeable. So although you have that osmotic gradient, you cannot reabsorb water and more water is excreted. So this will be what is known as diuresis, okay, because more water is excreted. Now, the other, just to add on some extra information, the other stimulus that affects ADH secretion is actually the volume of your blood. If you are in negative water balance, it means your ECF volume is reduced. And since blood volume is part of ECF volume, you will also be hypovolemic. So the other stimulus that also affects ADH secretion is actually volume. So let me just show you the next slide. So here at the top here is a hypovolemia. And so don't worry so much at this stage about the volume receptors since you are just starting your physiology program. But the volume sensing will also affect ADH secretion. So hypovolemia senses by different volume sensors will also affect the secretion of ADH, and the same things will happen. Yeah. So so those of you who are taking notes, I will ask Dr. Irfan to make this set of PowerPoint slides available to all of you. So don't have to worry about writing so fast, okay? So you can look at this slide as a reference for your future studies. So these are, so the next slide is, let's see what we have. Okay, this is a fairly complex summary diagram of the control of water balance. So some of the things we mentioned, the osmolarity stimulus, which affects the hypothalamic osmoreceptors. You also have the volume input, which affects the secretion of ADH. Now, I just want to add on here is that the thirst mechanism is obviously another way in which you can respond to your water balance status. So it's obviously common knowledge that as long as you're conscious, if you are in negative water balance, you feel thirsty, there is a group of neurons in the hypothalamus that actually represents the neurons that generates the sensation of thirst. So you will take more water, okay? So this again is a summary diagram of the control of water balance by the kidney involving ADH, as well as also present in the hypothalamus, the group of neurons that is called the thirst neurons. Okay, so that leads us to the next point in my talk, and that is besides osmoregulation, which is linked to control of water balance, the kidney is very essential in the control of the volume of ECF. Now, the volume of the extracellular fluid is linked to something called the total body sodium, or the sodium balance. And here I have with me Aditya, Putri, and Alia, who will now present as an introduction to this control of sodium balance by the kidney. So let me stop sharing and pass the time to them. Okay.
Hi Put, do you know where is Alia? We are going to study, but she hasn't come yet.
Yeah, let's wait for 2 more minutes. If Alia hasn't come yet, you can start to study first.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late.
Okay, Alia, no problem. We can start now.
But by the way, why did you come late, Alia?
I donated my blood earlier, but now I'm feeling dizzy and weak.
From what I've learned, when you sweat or when you donate blood, you are in a negative sodium balance.
Yes, since sodium balance affects blood volume, this also indicates that the control of sodium balance is also linked to the control of blood pressure by the kidneys.
That's why you are feeling dizzy and weak right now. I think it's gonna be better if you drink isotonic water to maintain your sodium balance.
Well, thanks for your advice, but
I wanna ask something. I often donate my blood. Is that will impact negatively to my body?
I think as long as we maintain our body fluid balance, it will not be dangerous. Donate blood will be good to your body instead.
I think so. By the way, do you know which organ that regulates the sodium balance?
Yeah, I know. The kidneys are essential in sodium balance, and sodium is the most abundant solute in extracellular fluid.
Yeah, kidney has a big role to our body.
Wow, amazing. I love my kidney.
Therefore, we have to protect our kidneys by doing some exercise, eat fruit and vegetable, and drink more water so we can maintain our body fluid balance.
Yes, I agree with you. So, can we start to study now?
Oh my god, we are too interested to discuss about sodium until I forget about it.
Okay, let's start.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Aditya, Alia, and Putri for the introduction to sodium balance. Yeah. Okay, let me. Okay, let's see this. Okay, so I just want to introduce here that the kidneys are involved in the sodium physiology in two ways. One is the control of sodium concentration. Okay, so and the other one is the control of sodium balance. They are actually two different things. So let me say that the control of sodium concentration is actually part of what is known as osmoregulation and water balance. And the reason is because as you enter into positive water balance, your osmolarity obviously changes. And the most important factor that affects osmolarity is actually your sodium concentration. Okay, so the three things are linked: osmoregulation, control of water balance, and the control of sodium concentration. Okay, so but the control of total body sodium is a separate mechanism that involves volume control. Let me illustrate that in a short while. So this is one of my favorite cartoon, and in one comic strip actually talks about sodium concentration, hyponatremia. So yeah, so remember this diagram. This is one of my recent way, in order to summarize small pieces of information. And I hope that this mental and visual diagram will help you. This is a combination of physiology and obviously geometry. So I call this a phi geometric diagram. So in this triangle, osmoregulation, OSM, is linked to water balance and also linked to sodium concentration control. So the three are related. So let me give you an example. If you are in negative water balance, your osmolarity obviously increases. And since sodium concentration is the main determinant of your osmolarity, you are also transiently hypernatremic. Okay, so remember that all these three actually refers to the same kind of events happening in the body. So when the kidneys osmoregulate, it is also responding to changes in water balance and responding to sodium concentration changes in the ECF. So I put these three together, it's like your coffee 3-in-1. Now, when you talk about sodium balance, total body sodium control by the kidney, as mentioned by the students, in the case of the person who has donated some blood, every time you lose body fluid, you always lose sodium because sodium is the main electrolyte in your body fluid. So let's move to the next slide. So this is, you've not done renal physiology yet, but let me just summarize a lot of renal physiology by making these sentences. Making this sentence, okay, changes in ECF volume, which is obviously linked to total body sodium balance, is compensated, always compensated by changes in urinary sodium excretion. Okay, so what this means is that since sodium balance is linked to ECF volume, if you want to recover volume, as in the case of the person or the student who has donated blood, you have to reduce the sodium excretion. So when you have hypovolemia, you always excrete less sodium because you want to recover sodium, and since total body sodium will eventually restore your blood volume or your ECF volume. So in the kidney, there are this F is for filtered, R is for reabsorbed. So the renal events that relates to sodium physiology is that the amount of sodium that you excrete in the kidney is dependent on how much you filter and how much you reabsorb or you recycle and recover back to the circulation. And so this means that in any situation where you need to reduce sodium excretion in response to negative sodium balance, you always have a reduction in the filtered and an increase in the sodium reabsorption. Okay, so this is a general formula, which I hope it will be useful as you think of this main tagline in the renal control of sodium balance. Now, the next slide is a bit complicated because it shows you, let me see what I have. Okay, yeah, this just shows you what happens at one part of the kidney, which is involved in the hormonal control of reabsorption of sodium. So if you are in negative sodium balance and the kidney needs to reabsorb sodium, this is what happens in the collecting duct. Okay, so you have this epithelial cell. On the right side is your blood capillary. On the left side is the lumen, the tubular fluid. So when you have reabsorption of sodium and more reabsorption of sodium in response to negative sodium balance, the first step is the movement of sodium down this channel here, okay, sodium channel, and then into the epithelial cell. And the second step in the kidney, the collecting duct, is that there is a pump that you all know very well, and this pump pumps sodium out. So first step, second step. So this completes what is known as the transcellular across the epithelial cell reabsorption of sodium. And this increased reabsorption of sodium that is stimulated when you are in negative sodium balance is affected by a key hormone from your adrenal cortex, and that is the hormone aldosterone, which will be mentioned a little bit more when we look at potassium balance. So this pathway is stimulated by aldosterone, both increase in sodium channel and increase in sodium potassium ATPase, so that you get increased reabsorption. Now, the next slide increases slightly the complexity. For those of you who have not yet learned renal physiology, is that the aldosterone actually comes from a series of chemical reaction that is produced in the blood when you are in negative sodium balance. So let me just show it to you, and you may not understand everything. That's not a problem. Use this as a reference. Oops, sorry, this is just okay. So so here it talks about how aldosterone. Look at the bottom first. Aldosterone is the one that increases sodium reabsorption in negative sodium balance. Now, as you go backwards, you find that the source of aldosterone is actually this hormone called renin. Okay, and renin is produced by the kidney. So this shows you is that whenever you have a drop in the volume, as in the case of a student who donated blood, you are in negative sodium balance. And there are three pathways. We won't go into detail today. There are three pathways that will lead to this common important increase in renin secretion. Okay, and that renin will eventually produce your aldosterone, which will then stimulate sodium reabsorption. So the kidney is able to increase or decrease sodium excretion based on your sodium status, your sodium balance. If you are in negative sodium balance, the kidney will excrete less sodium. If you are in positive sodium balance, the kidney will excrete more sodium. So every time you go to the washroom, as the first group of students say, the kidney is not just excreting urine as an excretory product. It is performing homeostatic work by varying the amount of sodium that you excrete in the urine. So every time you go to the toilet now, remember you are performing homeostatic work, homeostatic physiology. So I think the next slide is, yeah, so this is obviously our Corona season where everything is done online. So this is a Corona inspired renal slogan. This sounds like sanitizers and social distancing. So in negative sodium balance, the kidneys can reabsorb sodium that is always accompanied by chloride. Saline is just sodium chloride. And in scenarios of positive sodium balance linked to increase in volume, the kidney can excrete the excess sodium and help to restore the volume. So let me move on to the next slide. Okay, this is, yeah, so we cannot do this here because this is online. This is a song that was written some time ago about sodium physiology. This song, I think some of my colleagues here may know, is a common song that is popular in Indonesia as well as in Malaysia. It is the song Rasa Sayang, okay? So keep this. If you feel a little bit bored being quarantined at home, try to sing this sodium physiology song to Rasa Sayang. Okay, let me now try to put this all together. We've talked about control of water balance by the kidney, and we've talked about control of sodium balance by the kidney. So in this common example where you exercise and you sweat, actually you don't really need to have severe sweating to have this scheme. You can just remove severe. So every time you sweat, you enter into two different kinds of changes to both the water balance and the sodium balance. So obviously you have lost fluid, so you are in negative water balance. So your osmolarity has increased, your sodium concentration has increased because you are dehydrated. And so as we saw in the first point, that the hormone vasopressin is the main one that is involved in restoring the water balance. Now in the same situation, whenever you lost body fluid, now in the form of sweat, you always lose total body sodium. So you are in negative sodium balance. So the way in which the kidney or the body responds to recovering the sodium balance in order to restore this volume is by decreasing the sodium excretion. Okay, so this is done by, as you saw here, remember the equation, E is F minus R. So if you want to reduce the excreted sodium, you reduce the F, which is a temporary reduction in the GFR. Okay, this will reduce the filtered sodium. And then we have already mentioned that there will be increase in aldosterone that came from the renin-angiotensin pathway. So with that, I think we move to, let me just introduce you that in the loop of Henle, a lot of events are happening in the kidney. So we need to acknowledge this famous, iconic physiologist called Frederick Gustav Jakob Henle. So that leads us to the next point is on potassium balance. So here, let me welcome Ananda, Shinta, and Fatia, who will introduce us a little bit to potassium balance and the kidney's role in it.
Hello guys, do you remember who is he?
Of course, he is Popeye, right? And he really likes spinach.
Yes, why does Popeye have big muscles?
Popeye has a big muscles because he likes to eat spinach and there is a high concentration of potassium in the spinach.
And what is the function of potassium?
Potassium concentration in extracellular fluid affect the nerve and muscles. But the concentration must be balanced, so we have kidneys that regulate the balance of potassium in our body.
Other function of kidney is that the kidneys need to secrete and excrete the excess potassium we consume in our diet daily. As an example, after Popeye eats spinach, the concentration of potassium in extracellular fluid will increase to dangerous level if the potassium isn't transferred quickly to the cell.
What are examples of food that contain potassium?
Potassium is found in a wide variety of plant and animal foods in beverages such as spinach, milk, potatoes, and fruits.
And how does kidneys adjust to the varying dietary intake of potassium?
To adjust for varying dietary intake of potassium and to maintain a stable level of potassium in body fluid, principal cells that found in the late distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct secrete a variable amount of potassium.
I remember that. And do you know, guys, the key hormone that acts in the kidneys to secrete potassium is the hormone aldosterone.
Where is aldosterone come from and what is its function?
Aldosterone is created from cholesterol within the glomerulosa zone of the adrenal glands. Aldosterone's primary function is to act on the late distal tubule and collecting duct of nephron in the kidney, directly impacting sodium absorption and potassium excretion. It also indirectly affects the excretion of hydrogen ions by changing the amount of potassium in the lumen of the nephrons, causing downstream consequences on alpha intercalated cells. Lastly, it affects blood pressure by regulating the amount of sodium by increasing or decreasing the total amount of volume in the extracellular fluid.
So in conclusion, the kidney are essential for potassium balance. The kidney needs to secrete and excrete the excess potassium, and the key hormone that acts in the kidney to secrete potassium is aldosterone. And also, it contributes to homeostasis by altering blood composition, pH, volume, and pressure, maintaining blood osmolarity, excreting waste and foreign substances, and producing hormones.
Yes, you're right. But remember, guys, we have Prof. Cheng class in 5 minutes.
Oh no, let's go back to the class.
Okay, thank you, Shinta, Ananda, and Fatia for that nice introduction. Yeah. Okay, trying to control the slide. Not yet. Not responding yet. Okay. Okay. So, so it's a nice example done by the student in using papai. So next time you think of papai starts with P, you will think of potassium and the renal role in potassium balance. So let me just summarize here at this stage that the renal handling, we call it handling because that refers to the renal process. We've just said that for sodium control, sodium balance control, it involves filtration and reabsorption. For potassium, as the students have mentioned, you have an extra important event by the renal tubules, and that is secretion. For potassium control by the kidney, you have excreted potassium is filtered minus reabsorbed plus secreted. The reason why the secretion of potassium is essential because on a daily diet, you are adding to your ECF extra potassium. And if some of you may, most of you may already know that the extracellular fluid potassium is kept at a very low concentration, about 4 to 5 millimole. So every time you consume your food, you are adding in excess potassium. And so the body is able to respond to the transient hyperkalemia after a meal by increasing the secretion S and the excretion of potassium. And this nicely is also under the same hormone aldosterone. So the same hormone aldosterone, the steroid hormone from the adrenal cortex, increases sodium reabsorption and also at the same time also has a role in the potassium homeostasis by the secretion of potassium in the kidney. So let's see what we have. So this is just the overall scheme, and don't worry so much about the exact values. These are just quantitative values to show you that most of your potassium is inside your cells, because as most of you already know by now, potassium is the major intracellular electrolyte. So most of your potassium is in the cell, and obviously there is a relationship between the extracellular potassium, which is much lower, and the intracellular. So here just shows you that on a normal diet, roughly 100 millimole or milliequivalent of potassium, most of that is absorbed, some is excreted in the feces. And then the main point here, if you look at the kidney here, is that most of the most of your potassium, which is reabsorbed by the kidney, is then eventually excreted, secreted, and excreted in the urine. Okay, and this is obviously by one of the major hormone, and this is aldosterone. Okay, so don't worry so much about the other hormones, since we are not talking in detail about potassium homeostasis. But the main point here for today is that aldosterone is the main hormone secreted by the adrenal cortex that responds to changes in the extracellular fluid potassium, and it always increases potassium secretion. So the next flow diagram illustrates this. So here you are, if you have increased potassium intake, this is then sensed by the adrenal cortex. There are actually potassium sensors in the adrenal cortex, which is obviously part of the cells that will secrete aldosterone. Aldosterone then increases in the circulation. It acts on receptors in the collecting duct and produces the potassium secretion and excretion. And that is why you can enjoy a meal without suffering from consequences of hyperkalemia. We just mentioned that the concentration of ECF potassium is kept very low. And from your basic physiology lecture, and also students also mentioned in relation to 'Popeye' 's muscle, that the concentration, the transmembrane concentration of potassium determines the resting membrane potential, and so the excitability of tissues like the nerve and the muscles. And obviously, in the cardiac muscle, changes in potassium is very critical. High potassium in the extracellular fluid can actually eventually, if it's not treated, stop the heart from beating. So the control of potassium concentration at 4 to 5 millimole is a very crucial role of the kidney in maintaining normal ECF potassium. So I took this picture. Yeah, so this is a restaurant in my hometown, and it says there, very okay restaurant. So this reminds me of the K here, reminds me of potassium, that every time you eat, all you can eat buffet or whatever, there is no problem with suffering from hyperkalemia because of the important role of the kidney and the hormone aldosterone in secreting and excreting potassium. Now, if you have heard correctly, and this will be my last point, and related to the control of the pH balance in the body by the kidney. And the student mentioned also in the last group that there is some relationship between pH balance and potassium concentration. You do more of that in your clinical years when you do laboratory medicine. But let me just move on to the last two slides, I think, on the importance of the kidney in controlling pH balance. So this is the overall scheme. Let me just summarize the main points. This is obviously what you consume. Now, there are two main types of acid that you produce daily in the body. One is obviously related to carbon dioxide. You call it carbonic acid, and that is removed by the lungs. Okay, so the lungs are involved also in pH balance. Now, the second group of acid added to the body is obviously what is known as non-carbonic acid. And that non-carbonic acid, although it's a very small fraction of the total acid which is added to the body, can only be removed by the kidney. And that is why in cases of renal problem, you always get acidosis, because the small fraction of non-carbonic acid accumulates and cannot be removed by the failing kidney. And so there's a relationship between lung function and kidney function in the overall control of the blood pH. So I think this is maybe the last slide. So let me leave you with this big picture as you move on to learning about the lung and the kidney, that the chemical buffers in the body, chemical buffers are like the first responder, the frontliners of pH control, are linked to one of these major organ system. So the bicarbonate carbonic acid is actually a major extracellular chemical buffer. And this chemical buffer is linked to two major organ systems, the respiratory system that controls the carbonic acid denominator, and the renal function that controls the bicarbonate factor. And so we talk about the integrated physiology of the respiratory system and the renal system in the overall control of blood pH. So let me finish off so we are talking about the concept of homeostasis and the important role of the kidney in regulating water balance, sodium balance, potassium balance, pH balance, okay, and also calcium balance, which we have not talked about today. And so think homeostatically, and I hope that you will enjoy your physiology in the days to come. I think this is my last slide. So enjoy understanding and thinking through your physiology. Thank you for listening, and thank you for all the students who have participated in this pioneer activity. Thank you very much. Oh, let me stop sharing.
Oke, baiklah. Apakah ada yang ingin ditanyakan dari mahasiswa FK? Silakan yang mau bertanya kepada Prof. Cheng.
Yeah, I was told by the students that there are Harry Potter fans in among the students. So one of the group of students is called Gavenclaw. Yeah, I see a lot of Gavenclaw there. What does the name? Sorry, just curious to ask. What does the name alpha derive from? ALPHARD. Maybe some students can tell me. Those who are from alpha, ALPHARD. What is the origin of that name?
Ada pertanyaan dari Prof. Cheng. Apa nama hormon? Coba, apa yang tahu?
Nobody wants to speak for alpha.
Sorry, Prof. Cheng, can you repeat the question?
No, it's just that a lot of the background has alpha. I just wondered what that would derive from. So maybe a representative from alpha, you must be proud of alpha. So you must tell us something about it. Yeah. Nobody is proud of alpha in your group.
From Alpha Reliable Doctor, Doc.
Sorry?
Alpha Reliable Doctor.
Oh, okay. Alpha Reliable Doctor. Fantastic.
Prof.
Oh, that's very nice. Yeah, thank you, Yolanda. Alpha Reliable Doctor. Fantastic. Great.
Okay, guys, do you have any question for Professor Cheng? I think it is very interesting and interactive lecture from Cheng.
Yes, I think the students have done very well, and I was
Okay.
able to build on their creativity. Yeah.
So, Prof. Cheng, I think that the students are quite shame. So
Sure, no problem. It's
actually
okay.
that maybe I propose Prof. Cheng to give questions, and I think 3 or 4 questions. Oh, they're raising hand. Arkan and Nadira. Okay, Arkan and Nadira. Okay, Arkan first, and then second one Nadira. Please, Arkan.
Yeah, please unmute.
Unmute.
Yeah,
Unmute.
please. Hi, Arkan.
For Arkan.
Hello, Professor. Good morning. How are you?
Okay, yourself.
Okay. So I would like to ask a question about kidney, but it's more related to the disease of kidney failure. So I had an uncle who had a kidney failure, and over time, his body becomes so thin, and to the point that I can see his bones. So what is happening to my uncle in regards to kidney function? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I think probably because of the inability to excrete the metabolic waste, the person enters into what is known as uremia, and so that uremia obviously makes him feel sick and loss of appetite. So he's probably not eating. That's why he's losing weight. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for the clear answer, Professor.
Sure, Alkan, yeah.
Nadira, please give your questions, and after that, Akil.
Hi, Nadira. Where are
Hi,
you?
Professor.
Where are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Nadira, and I would like to ask a question. So, if we don't even consume water at all for several days, can our kidney still able to produce urine properly? And does it affect the blood circulation? Thank you, Professor.
Yeah. So obviously, if you do not drink at all, let's say you are stranded in a desert or something like that, then obviously, eventually, your blood volume will be less and less, and that will affect circulation to your brain. So definitely, yeah, you will not be able to survive so long. Yeah. So in fact, water, they say that you can survive longer without food than without water. Yeah, without food, the body will just break down, catabolize your protein to supply the energy. But without water, your ECF volume and blood volume will become too low to maintain sufficient blood flow to the essential organs. Yeah. So that is more critical. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer, Professor.
Thank you, Nadira.
Okay, the third one is Akil. Please, Akil, give your questions to Professor Cheng.
Thank you, Mr. Ivanuddin. Professor Cheng, I want to ask a question. It's not one question. I have two questions for you.
Okay.
Related to the presentation. In homeostasis condition, how is the smell of the urine should be? Because for me myself, when I'm urinated, sometimes it smells different.
Oh, I think the smell of the urine depends on your diet. So I think it varies from person to person. Yeah. Yeah. It depends on because some of the food that you take in has got chemicals that might be filtered easily into the urine, and if that chemical has a smell, then you will change the smell of your urine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Professor Cheng.
Maybe you have two questions.
Yeah, you have another question.
The second one.
Yeah, it's not really related to the presentation, but as a professor yourself, maybe can you give me an advice as a student how to learn psychology in the right way or the easiest way?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I wish I have a formula for you. I'm obviously much older than you, so it's just that as you proceed along your journey ahead, you have many years ahead to build your physiology foundation. So take your time, enjoy your physiology, and yeah, it takes time. There's no secret formula. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Cheng. Just study, Prof. Cheng.
That's right. We are at an age where we get priority for the vaccine, so we are much older than you.
Yes, yes. I think it's the positive of physiology is we don't have to learn we have to spell the name or anything.
Yeah.
But the important thing is the logical thinking. The
Yeah.
process,
Yeah.
The process. You have to learn that. You have to understand.
Right.
Not meaning that you have to know word by one the word, but the logical behind of that. I think this is the positive of physiology. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Cheng and Dr.
Yeah.
Ivan.
Okay, good one.
Thank you. Right.
Professor Cheng, that I usually ask the student one or two questions, and for those who can answer the questions, we will give the additional score for feedback or for quiz, something like that.
Yeah.
So we have a regular quiz for each week.
That's good.
And somebody who can answer the question from the teachers. So the teacher will note the name of him or her, and then we will add the score to his quiz. So I ask you to give maybe 2 or 3 questions for students.
I see. Yeah.
And someone who can answer that, we will note it as a bonus for the score. Lex, please, Professor Cheng.
Yeah. So
question based on
on the lecture lah, because they haven't done so much of renal physiology, right? Yeah, I have to think about what I said to ask the question. Okay, the first question, anyone can unmute. Where is aldosterone synthesized?
Gitu.
Yeah, simple. Where is aldosterone synthesized? Anyone?
Okay, I saw Yosafat.
Okay.
Raise hand. Okay, Yosafat, please unmute it.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I think the aldosterone is synthesized in adrenal cortex on glomerular zone.
Okay, so you know the details. All right, that's fine.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay,
Okay.
Yosafat, you note it's your name. Okay, second one, Professor Cheng.
Okay, second one. Okay, is which part of the nephron does aldosterone act on? Which part of the nephron?
Okay. Which part of the nephron? Okay. It's very easy.
Yes. Which part of the nephron?
Okay, come on.
Yeah, it's also mentioned by the student.
Yeah.
They showed the diagram also.
Come on, please. No one.
Sahnas.
Sahnas. Okay, Sahnas, please.
The target is in distal convoluted tubulus. Is it Prof?
Distal
convoluted tubulus.
Distal convoluted tubule is not the exact site.
Okay. So, Justian, you support already. Justian, okay, Justian.
Okay, thank you, Doctor and Professor. I think it's on the collectivus duct, isn't it, Professor?
Yes, correct. Collecting duct. Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay, good one. Okay, the last question, Professor Cheng.
Last question. Okay. Okay. State the action of aldosterone on the two cations. State the action of aldosterone on the two cations.
Okay.
Yes.
Please raise your hand.
Okay.
Two action of aldosterone.
On the two cations.
Okay, two cation. Okay, Sinta, please. Sinta first.
Okay, Prof. I think aldosterone acts directly impacting sodium absorption and potassium excretion, Prof.
Sorry, the mic is not so clear. Can you say again?
Aldosterone directly impact to sodium absorption and potassium excretion.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So it increases sodium absorption and potassium secretion. Yeah. So this is part of their presentation, so you should know it very well. Thank you, Shinta. Yeah. So aldosterone is like a multitasker. You can do two things at the same time.
Okay. Okay, from Cheng, I think, let me offer my thanks. So I think in 10 o'clock, Prof. Cheng, unfortunately that we have the student must to join for another lecture from Dr. Budi, and they will be separated into three class, yes, in parallel class. at 10 o'clock. And I, as maybe Dr. Budi, hello Dr. Budi. Ya, mungkin ucapan terakhir lah. Please give your last comments for the Professor Cheng for the nice presentation and for the nice interactive lecture. And I get some message from another physiology teacher from other faculty, Professor Cheng. They said that you are very good. Your presentation and your interactive lecture with our student is very interesting for them. Thank you very much. Maybe Dr. Budi can give last comment for Professor Cheng.
Okay, thank you, Professor Cheng. It is interactive lecture, and we hope you will give another lecture to our student. Ya, terima kasih Dr. Irfan dan semuanya. Kita ucapkan terima kasih kepada Prof. Cheng.
Thank you, Prof. Cheng.
Professor.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you so much, Professor.
Please,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor.
Professor.
Yeah.
Have a good day, Professor.
Yeah. Okay, Professor Cheng. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Hello. Bye bye. See you. See you next to IUPS. I hope 2022.
Hopefully, yeah.
But in August, I hope we can meet you in Makassar or online. I don't know.
Online, Makassar.
Online, yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay lah.
Okay.
Yeah. I hope that we can meet again in Beijing 2022. Okay. Bye. See you. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Yeah. Thank you, student. Again. Bye.
Yo, thank you. Bye. Selamat. Sampai jumpa. Budi, silakan lanjut ya.
Tunggu ya, istirahat dulu.
Wito,
nanti
di YouTube-nya, streamingnya di